Hi everybody. This video is walking you guys through your first essay assignment. This is your narrative essay because you guys have read a number of different texts from different genres, movements, historical eras, all short stories in this unit. So this unit, you're going to be writing a written analysis argument over one of the stories that you read in the unit, looking at that text both in terms of the literary elements and the narrative elements as well. So the prompt is pretty simple. Choose one of the short stories that you read in this unit. Develop a written literary analysis of that work. So you contextualize that analysis by looking at specific literary elements and terminology from the course lectures. Bring those into your argument. So that could be things like characterization, setting, point of view, etc. You're going to create a concrete thesis argument around one of these central literary elements, and then include main ideas supported by evidence from the text. So what that means is to keep your argument very narrow and focused. There's a lot of things you could talk about in all of these texts, right? You could look at imagery, you could look at characterization, dialogue, conflict, similes, metaphors, whatever it might be. I want you to pick one central focus. So whether you want to look at the function of dialogue, you want to look at a theme, you want to look at particular set of images or symbols. Make that your central argument focus and then build the rest of your argument around that. So, for example, if I wanted to look at the story of an hour, I might say that the theme of the story is a struggle for power between two young Americans. And I would secondarily, my main ideas would be that this is shown through the use of dialogue within the text, the use of the specific symbol of the hills as themselves as representation of her pregnancy, and maybe thirdly, I'm not even sure, it could be something like the use of conflict of man versus man. That's not the best example, but it gives you an idea. So my central focus would be the struggle for power, the theme of the struggle for power between these two people. So choose one text, one main focus from literary elements, and then build the rest of your argument with your main ideas around that. You'll have a kind of a guided outline you'll do, but you should essentially have in your introduction, a central argument, which is your thesis statement, and your main ideas. Those main ideas will be the focus of each of your body paragraphs, and then you'll add a conclusion which kind of wraps up the argument. So consider things, like I said, what's the primary thing you want to focus on? Is it setting? Is it conflict? Is it characterization? What's the argument that you're making about it? So don't just say that it exists in the text. You're always making some kind of argument about that element within the text. So really try to think, what's the author's goal in using it? What are they trying to achieve? So for example, in The Lottery, she's not just telling you a story. Shirley Jackson's not just telling you a story about a quaint little town. Think back to the lectures that you listened to. What is Shirley Jackson trying to tell you about society? What is she trying to warn you about in society? And then how does she use those literary elements to achieve that? And then like I said, think about the primary thing you want to talk about, but it's certainly not the only thing. So think about the other literary elements that are used to kind of achieve that goal. So in The Lottery, if you want to say the argument is the central theme of the degradation of society or something like that, you might bring in the three-legged stool as a specific symbol that's really important in that text. Or you might bring in the vernacular that she uses to create, the comfort of with the characters. Or you might bring in, the conflict of man versus society and why that shows that society is degrading in this text, whatever it might be. You might also think about how the author's background influences that work. So, for example, in Hills Like White Elephants, Hemingway was a post-war vet. He saw the horrors of war. He was an expat in Europe. He lived a lot of what he's writing about. So how does that influence what he's writing in terms of these two young expat Americans living overseas post-war? Same things with Charlotte Perkins Gilman or Kate Chopin. All of their backgrounds, even Amy Tan's Two Kinds, are very important and influence their text, influence how they write and what they're writing about and why they're trying to write this. And then lastly, you can think about the critique that you can make around the text. So no text is infallible. You absolutely can critique the text. Think in a scholarly manner. Think about what you might add as a critique. A critique can be positive or negative. You do need to include one research resource in your work. So that needs to be a credible source from the internet is fine. It can be something like PBS or bibliography or a .edu site. Just make sure that you are pulling in quotes from the research source that helps support your analysis. So if you're telling me that, like I said, the stool is a very important symbol in the lottery, maybe you find a good source that talks about the function of the stool and bring that into your own argument. Don't let it be the whole argument. You're using that source to support your argument. So you want to pull in, a selection of quotes, short, succinct quotes that help support your argument. So you need to make sure that you're citing those correctly, both in text and on the bibliography. So like I said, this is a basic essay format, so it should have, or basic sort of literary analysis essay format, so it should have a clear intro with a thesis and main ideas, and then you should use those main ideas as the kind of primary points on each paragraph in your body. Pull in solid evidence from the text. So this means what you're doing is pulling in specific quotes from the text that show your audience what you're talking about. So if I wanted to say that dialogue is very important in the story, in Hills Like White Elephants, because it shows the abortion that they're too scared to discuss openly, too scared to name. I might pull in one or two lines from the characters which show them discussing this without actually ever discussing it. If I wanted to say that the color, say yellow, is a significant symbol within the yellow wallpaper, I need to pull in quotes which show that significance or why it's significant. If I wanted to say that at the end of Two Kinds, Amy Tan, coalesces her two identities peacefully, I might pull in a quote from the end of the story where she talks about the two music pieces side by side in harmony. So you guys get the idea, but really, really important, you want to pull in good, solid evidence from the text to support your ideas, support your arguments. Your essay needs to be 3 to 4 pages in length and is due on Sunday, February 28th at 11:59 p.m. So this means you have to write to the minimum page length, which is to the bottom of the 3rd page. If you write less, I'll take off points. You're always welcome to write more. So 4 pages is really just a suggestion, so you don't have to just keep writing and writing, but you can write more if you need to. Proper MLA is required, everything's checked for plagiarism, and you do need to include a bibliography that has at least 2 entries, whichever story you're using and the source that you're using. Remember, I gave you guys in week 1 resources for MLA, resources for the basics of grammar. All of that information is there. If you're not sure, I do recommend Purdue OWL online. That's a great resource. EasyBib.com is also a great resource to help format your bibliographies correctly. Remember that MLA means in the top left corner, you have your header, which is your name, the course and section, the date, and the instructor's name. You always have a title. Don't bold it. Don't do anything different to it. Just put a title. Top right corner, you'll always have page numbers, and then 1-inch margins all around. And then make sure that you have double-spaced Times New Roman Arial Cambria Calibri font, size 12. One more really important thing, you want to make sure in your settings, make sure that you go into the space layout. So I'm not going to mess this up, but go into the line spacing options. Make sure that your after is always set to 10 and your before, or 0, and your before is always set to 10. That will ensure you don't have extra spacing. And then the last thing I want to make sure you guys see is what you'll be graded on. So this essay will basically have 2 parts. So your outline that you'll be completing, that's actually worth 20 points. So that's 20 free points on your grade, as long as you do it and do the full outline. And the final draft is worth 80 points. So it's a good way to kind of add a little bit of extra points to your grade there. You're going to be assessed in making sure you have good analysis of the work and its major concepts, solid evidence from the primary and the secondary sources, proper number of sources, meaning 1 at least, proper page length, MLA, citations, and then the fully developed essay structure and a good, clear organization of your ideas. Some helpful things to keep in mind. You guys have seen so many different literary elements that you could think about, but kind of coalesced. Think about characterization, so think about things like archetypes, primary, secondary, development. Are they flat? Are they round? Are they dynamic? Think about literary devices like similes, personification, foreshadowing, metaphors. Think about structure, so think about the dramatic arc. Think about the rising action, the climax, the falling action. Think about the conflict or the point of view. So if it's a first person, is it third person, omniscient? And then think about other literary concepts, so themes, symbols, motifs, allusions. And then secondarily, you want to think about the historical context. So who is that author? What were the events that were happening during that time? How did those social, ethical, or moral issues show up in the text? How are they being discussed through the text? That sort of thing. So this is purposefully broad because I want you guys to choose the work that you really want to write about, the one that you really enjoyed, or the one that you feel like you have the most to say on. And then I also want you to think about what you want to say about that. What is of interest to you? Is it the theme? Is it the characterization? Is it something else entirely? So you are more than welcome to email me with questions or ideas. And like I said, I want this to be really something that you're interested in. That always makes it much easier to write those 3 pages. And let me know if you have any questions on this at all.